Hey folks, it's Samuel Huber from SamuelHuber.net, Samuel Huber on YouTube, Huber on Facebook, Huber Family Adventures on Instagram. I'm here with Simone, who's have our little thing called Spectrum Cuties, which is a organization I believe in
Yes.
Texas, which is creating a positive community for people on the spectrum and their families. Simone, can you tell the folks a bit about yourself and a bit about what you do down in Texas?
Sure. Well, again, my name is Simone, and I am from Houston, Texas. I live like in a suburb of Houston, and I actually have a full-time job. I'm in HR, but on the side, I did come up with Spectrum Cuties, me and my husband, and we have a 4-year-old son named Zai, who's on the autism spectrum. And that's pretty much what motivated us to start the whole Spectrum Cuties thing.
Hmm. So, what does Spectrum Cuties do?
Well, basically, it was designed just to motivate young kids and adults on the spectrum. When as I was first diagnosed with autism, there was a lot of different emotions. We were first time parents, and then we also was, first timers with this whole autism thing. We didn't really know anything about it. And originally, when we first found out that he was diagnosed with autism, I reached out to a few people on social media, like different autism groups. And even though it is a great outlet for people just to express how they feel or how their day is going, their frustrations, I found it being more of frustrations than it was of joy, and it just kind of triggered anxiety in me because I didn't really know what to expect with his progression as he grew older. So I just, as the more I did my research on it, I just came up with the conclusion that hey, it doesn't have to be bad. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a bad thing. It's something that we just have to like learn how to embrace and get him through. And I just didn't want to shine a bad light on it
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. Again, I respect people for, everyone, no one is perfect. Autism, the journey of it itself is not perfect, but I just wanted to shine a light on the good aspects of it. And that's pretty much how we came up with Spectrum Cuties.
All right, thank you so much. And that is definitely what I'm all about here on Heroes of Autism is the positive aspects of autism because it's true. Like there's in a lot of groups out there, it's all about the struggle and about how hard it is, but which can be very despairing, especially for a first-time parent like you, a first-time parent experiencing a child on the spectrum. Like you want hope. You don't want to hear, you know, just about how things are hard. Like those things are important, and to prepare yourself for. I would say the biggest aspect is know that your child experience is going to be different than anything you can read online. Have you found that to be the case with your son that it's different from what you read online?
Not necessarily. I feel like as far as like his emotions and things like that, I mean, he still throws tantrums like a normal toddler would. But as far as like the signs of autism is definitely there. Like in the beginning, he had the hand flapping, walking on the tiptoes, and just different little things. But
Mhm.
as far as like violence or harming himself or others and things like that, thankfully we don't have to deal with that part of it. But I do understand that it's all types of versions of autism, which is why it's called a spectrum. And we just want to like just take little pieces of all of the autistic kids world and put them together and say, hey, no matter how mild it is or severe it is, there are still like some great things. And like I said before, I do want to just reiterate the fact that I understand, that it can be a difficult road when you're first trying to adjust to it. and also just the changes within your child. And again, there are avenues where you can go to if you want to vent, or my DM is always open. People can still come to me, ask me questions, vent, or whatever like that. But again, we just want to just shine the light on like just the milestones and the things that they are able to accomplish along the way.
Thank you. How have you and your husband learned to adjust as your son develops, and learn to accept him as he is, and accept the things like hand flapping, walking on his toes, and any other behaviors he may have?
Honestly, I think it just comes naturally as a parent. When you love your child, you want to accept them for who they are. You can't change them. I feel like, we're strong believers in the Lord. I feel like God made all of us perfectly the way that He wanted us to be. And, even someone like me who doesn't have autism, I still have flaws. I still have things that, I have to work hard on to maintain, and things I need to improve on. So I just kind of look at it like in that aspect of
Mhm.
things, and we just try to be like encouraging to him, and we just want him to know that he is accepted no matter what his diagnosis is.
Mhm. That's really beautiful, Simone. Would you say that your faith is what allow you to be extra accepting of your son and what he is going through? Do you think that having faith is a really key component to having understanding that everyone is different, but be, difference can be beautiful? Um,
Definitely, definitely. We believe that pretty much whatever his challenges are, he can overcome them. Autism will still be a part of him, but it's not who he is. So
mm,
again, just no matter what he struggles with, we just made a commitment as parents to love him through it, to get him through it, work hard with him, whatever his weaknesses are. We just try to build him up and turn him into strengths, basically. And we're just gonna get through it. So, like you said, with faith, that's just believing. Even in things that are unseen, we don't know the future, but we just have faith to know that it's all gonna work out, and he's gonna be successful in life.
and I think that's perfect. Like perfect answer, because the key thing that my parents did, and what I always encourage my clients who are parents to do it, is to see your child's humanity and turn their autism traits into strengths. Like when your son reaches datinghood, I would advise him to turn your autism into a pickup line that makes me an incredibly honest person, or it gives me these wonderful quirks. And I think that's the hugest thing for parents who just found their child's on the spectrum is how can we turn my child's attention to detail, my child's hypersensitivity into a strength. Um,
Definitely. And
so
another thing, like just for an example, and I know that this is common in autistic children as well, autistic people, period, but the repetitiveness. So,
mhm,
like for instance, my son, he may watch a video and he'll just keep rewinding it over and over again. And it can be something like, educational, or it could be music or whatever. But I've learned, of course, with repetitiveness, it's kind of like studying for an exam. If you look at it repeatedly and long enough, you're going to like absorb that.
mhm,
And I think that's one of his strengths, and why he was able to like learn alphabets and numbers and colors and stuff at an early age. Like when he first started talking, he literally, those were like some of his first words, just like reciting
mhm.
ABCs and things like that. So
Yeah, and you're exactly right. That for parents out there who have contacted me many times about watching the same video over and over, your child is a visual thinker, and then as a visual thinker, they don't read the word; they memorize how the word or letters or numbers look like. So it's them trying to learn and process and complete the pattern in their mind. So when your son just starts saying numbers and letters, that is them figuring out how to communicate. Just like when a neurotypical child says "ma" or "pa," and they learn to say their first word, this is how an autistic person learns language. And then if you want your child to learn something, find a funny video that teaches that, and let your child watch it over and over because they're trying to absorb language like any other child, but in a visual context. And that's the hugest advice I give to parents. If you want to teach your child something, make it visual, because auditory is not, for most people on the spectrum, our strength. So you've created this positive community. What has been the biggest surprises and the biggest like things you enjoyed about creating like a positive way about looking at the spectrum?
I think the biggest thing is just the reactions that I get from the parents because with spectrum cuties, it's kind of difficult at times, like I guess balancing the age groups because, if we're uplifting kids, a lot of them are nonverbal or just not at an age where they can like express themselves and give feedback on their own. We're relying on the parents to do that. So I
Mhm.
think overall it's been rewarding just hearing from parents saying, hey, what you're doing is great, and they're excited about like sharing their child to the world, which is another difficult thing because there's so much going on in the world and you
Mhm.
want to be protective of your children, but at the same time you have to come to the reality that, hey, autism is something that a lot of people still don't know about. I just I don't want for children to go out in the world, or you're sitting at a restaurant or something like that, and just because they're loud or whatever and getting stares, the more people know about them and the things that they do, you know
Mhm.
I feel like in the long run, they'll be able to accept it more. So that's another rewarding thing. I know that it takes time, but we'll
Mhm.
eventually get there, with just acceptance of it.
Yeah, exactly. And knowledge is power, especially when it comes to acceptance. That people are going to remain ignorant if we hide our children from the world, and we're also teaching our children that they are meant to be hideable, and that destroys their self-esteem. I tell parents, even with nonverbal children, that they are listening and watching. If they're watching you hide them from the world, and the only way they're going to learn how to be in the world is if you invite them into your world and invite the world into their world. And be your child's advocate and find ways for your child to show the world what you can do. Like Temple Grant has taught me recently, show the work, show your child's strengths. If that's just on Instagram, posting a video of them doing laundry by themselves or brushing their teeth for the first time by themselves, show that you're proud, because um, you can show that child when they're really struggling. Look, remember when you learned to brush your teeth, how hard that was, but you were able to do it. Um,
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a real cool thing. Like I wish my parents like video recorded me
mm,
when I was young. So that's another perk, is just that, even with our son, he'll be able to like look back at all of this and say, wow, and actually see like his progression. So
mm,
yeah, it's a good thing.
yeah, and I'll speak from someone who is on the spectrum's perspective. Like, working with autistic children from age 5 to 21, I really saw my own progression of how far I came, because I went from barely being able to speak 1 to 2 syllable words to being fully articulate. But it was a long process, and I got to really see that as I've taught children and look back at my childhood photos and remembering how far I've come. And that's the hugest thing, is you want to build on those small victories. And then for the nonverbal kiddos out there, the fact that they're able, every little victory, record that, even if it's just tying their shoes or the simplest thing, like that has value in itself. Because for neurotypical people, they take a lot of that stuff for granted, and when they're raising their neurotypical children, that stuff just goes by so quickly. You never truly value that. But if
It
you take
definitely,
takes you 3 years to potty train your kid, like that will be something that will stick with you forever, and how powerful that is. And, um,
I totally agree.
mhm. And your children also teach you this, how beautiful simplicity is in this complicated world with all this craziness going on.
Yes.
Uh, has your son helped you remember, hey, mom, let's slow things down and just appreciate the moment?
Definitely. Of course, he doesn't, tell me that, but
Mm,
his presence alone gives me peace a lot of times. Like even when, I'm going through things, if I had a rough day or whatever, I just look at him and like the joy on his face, like he really does appreciate the simple things. And I actually admire that. It's like for him to be 4 years old, he
mhm,
has some qualities that, I can use for myself. So,
mhm,
just like watching him like run around all the time full of energy and playing, even if it's raining and he can't go outside or whatever, he just like makes the best of it. He's just a simple kid. So
mhm. That's beautiful. And that's definitely something for, I think, anyone who's watching this video to take away is look what you can learn from your children rather than what what instead of grieving for your children. Like your children have so much to teach you no matter where they are on the spectrum. What are some other things that Spectrum Cues is doing? Like, how are you reaching out to the community to spread your positive message?
well, at first, well, I just created the page. I want to say like November of last year, so it hasn't
Mhm,
been up that long. But I had different things that were lined up. For instance, we were going to be a part of what they call Stomp the Runway for Autism, and it was actually scheduled for this month, but they had to postpone it a couple of months out due to COVID-19. So that kind
mhm,
of changed everything. But we created Autism Warrior t shirts and hoodies, and we were actually going to allow some of the children on the spectrum to actually model it, for that event. And they pretty much just raise awareness, and the money goes towards like some nonprofit organizations in a different state. So I was just collaborating with another person with that project. And then we had Autism Moms of Houston, which I was going to donate, t-shirts for door prizes just to kind of give back to autism moms and things like that. So again, all of that really just came to a halt with
right.
with this whole coronavirus. So
Mhm.
that's where we're at with that. But I do
Well,
have some other things that are coming up soon.
you guys have come far since November. And I think they're like utilizing Instagram right now is the best way to grow awareness because everyone's on Instagram right now. And for the autistic moms out there, one thing that I've noticed is how do they disclose that their child's autism to their family and their friends and explaining it. What would be your biggest advice to disclosing that? Because it's often the fear of the stigma or people not understanding. Like, how would you start that conversation with, say, if your mom was like, "Autism, what is that?"
It's funny you say that because not only was it new to us, but it was new to our family because we don't have anyone that we know of with autism on either side. Well, actually, my husband he has I want to say his half sister has a son with autism, but it's not
Close enough.
yeah, it's not really close enough. So we did have to break down that once we learned about it and the doctor talked to us about it and gave us the history, we did have to educate, our family on it as well. And we had questions. So even along the way, even now that he's had it for a couple of years, sometimes we still have to stop and be like, hey, remember, he has autism. So he's gonna do this or he may react this way, and they all accept it, but it's just, I think it's just a learning process
Mm,
along the way. You can never like not learn something new about it.
mm.
So I mean, it's been pretty good just being able to like educate them on things.
I'm glad that they've been so accepting, and I think what I liked about you said it's a process of learning. Even if if your family member reacts poorly the first time you tell them, like let them, get there. That it's a process of absorbing the information. Just like your children takes them time to learn new information. It'll also take your family members time to learn and accept what autism is, especially if they've never heard of it or experienced it themselves. I think that's the biggest thing, and not just write off your family members because their first reaction was poor, like bad, because
Yeah.
'Cause what happens a lot is your family member will go home and Google it, and then they'll read all the bad stuff, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, does your son do that?" And the key is just being, "No, this is how my son actually is." And the quote I always love to say, "If you met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism." That we're all individuals, despite we're not our label, we're our people.
Exactly.
What resources have you found to be the most helpful in your journey of learning what autism is, and that would be really you think would be really helpful for a lot of parents out there?
Um, it's been kind of biased reviews on it, but in my personal opinion, the best resources I received was from ABA therapy. I mean, because they still teach you a lot about autism. You have your parent conferences where they sit down and break down things to you. It's just a plethora of knowledge from it. And most importantly, they are angels, in my opinion. They're like excellent at what they do. Um, our son has, I mean, he's improved tremendously, even from like learning how to put his plate in the sink or throw his trash away. We've been seeing just a lot of different like good things from ABA. So I would say that was be my best resource, and my advice to parents would just be to check it out. If their child is not receiving those type of services, if they have any behavioral issues, or if they just want to prepare them for grade school, that would be a great avenue to just look into.
Hmm. Yeah, I worked in a school that focused on ABA for 8 years, and I definitely believe, like you say, it does work. And I think the key thing for parents to understand too is finding the right people to work with your child. Like that, they have one bad experience with ABA. Look at how was the staff handling it, because it can often be people that aren't fully trained and or just a bad situation. But don't give up on the therapy itself. Is my advice, because your child is a very black and white thinker. It's either this or that, and ABA helps organize their life for them because they need that routine. So don't give up on ABA because your child had bad experience with it. Um, as much when you go for an interview, I would say interview the person that's going to be treating your child with ABA therapy. If you don't like
Yeah,
them or you think they're not right for your child, try to find another program that offers it, because because that person's not just treating your child; they're building a human relationship with that child, and you want to see, can they build a rapport with my child? And that's the real place to start with ABA. I think is find the right program for your child.
definitely.
Mhm.
And like with our son's school, he actually has four therapists. So it's four therapists to a child. So, even if it was a situation, which I'm glad that he gets along with all of them, but even if it was a situation where one may be like weaker, I guess, in communication with him, then he has that next person, and he's learning how to adjust to different people instead of just being with just one person like all day long.
Right. And that is so key, because for a lot of youngsters on the spectrum, getting attached to one therapist happens a lot because that one therapist works. But being exposed to different people is so key for our kiddos on the spectrum, because that's life. We meet so many people that we gel with, and some people we're just like, I hate you, but like I still have to work with you, and that's such an important life skill. I think that's not often talked about in autism, is that how to adjust to different people and how to work with them, even if you have such differences in communications. So I think, Simone, your viewpoint is excellent on that front, and learning to work with different people is a journey. And if your children see you working with the staff, they'll try to work with the staff too, and better
Yeah,
communicating. Um, it sounds like you and your husband are definitely like, you're the number one example for your children. If you're pissed off at the staff, your child's going to react the same way and be pissed off at the staff and refuse to get involved in their own therapy. Um,
Yeah.
and how do
Yeah,
you help your son get, like to participate in in his own therapy at home? Because often parents like feel the need, especially as a child as young as 4, to do everything for their child. Like, how do you know? Okay, I have to let my son try.
ooh, that's I'll try to make that one short because I think every parent can agree that, for those who did not go to school to be teachers or therapists,
Mm,
it can be a challenge, because you want what's best for your child. I'm constantly thinking, like, okay, what can I do differently? It's days where he may not necessarily like want to do the work, or he knows it so much to where it's like he's bored. So then you have to think of like fun ways that you can kind of twist it around to like challenge him and things like that. But
mhm,
I would say the key thing is just not even necessarily repetition, but
mhm,
more of like a schedule, like to where if he's going to be doing like working on letters and numbers one day, and then he may do ABC Mouse another day for like the full day off and on. Or sometimes we may just have it to where he just has a free day during the week where he's,
mhm,
on the phone or playing outside or whatever. We just try to switch it up to where, he doesn't get bored easily.
mhm.
But it is a challenge.
Yeah, as it is with a neurotypical child. And I think you're right. Switching up is key. I mean, having that schedule. When you do switch it up, have it like the same day every week, so they know. Oh, Wednesday is my free day, or Tuesday is my is letters and numbers day. And I think the other huge part is incentives. If your child's really into screen, which most of our children are, holding off that screen time so they do X amount of work, even if it's you're building up from 30 seconds to an hour, bit
Yes,
by bit. And just and for parents out there, I always tell them, would you do your job for free? No, you want to get paid. Look at these rewards as you're paying your child for the work. And the huge key is pay don't pay them until they've done their job, even if that job's only like 2 minutes long, or just throwing
exactly.
or just throwing out their own trash. Because you want to entice your children to keep doing tasks. But if you're giving them a reward if they throw a tantrum and don't do it, then they're going to know that you're rewarding the tantrum, not the job.
Definitely. And you said it right too. This is with any child. This goes beyond just like a autistic child. I mean, you have to set boundaries with your child. Like,
Mhm.
it says train up your child.
Mhm.
So yeah, definitely. We like to also try to get him to read. I know like different things like reading is something that he doesn't like to do, but I noticed like with ABC Mouse, they'll actually read the story and it'll flip the pages for him. So he's starting to pay attention to that too. So again, just going back to just kind of trying new things. And it'll eventually work. And then you have to like be positive and going back to having faith to know that, as long as you do everything that you can do, that's all that matters. And we're keeping hope that he doesn't regress by the time he goes back to therapy. But so far I feel like he's definitely retained like the education and things like that. So we're just doing the best that we can and while we're working at the same time.
Well, sounds like you're doing a wonderful job, Simone. And I think things like ABC Mouse and stuff like that are perfect because when it comes to teaching your child how to read, especially an autistic child, you can make the words visual and have like the computer read to the child as the pages are going by. That's perfect because it's again visual. Uh,
Yeah,
so for parents out there wondering why that's so important, for an autistic person, myself included, I learned to read by being able to picture the page in the book in my mind and the words like the actual like letters in my mind and putting them together. So when I hear it and then play it back over and over and over again, I can. see the pages in my mind, and then that's how I learned to read as a child, by being able to visualize it rather than process it uh, um, through auditory or by actually looking at the physical page itself. And I still do
Yeah,
that today, where I'll read a page in a book and then I'll look up and then visualize what I just read so I can process. So if you record yourself reading the book to your child and have your child watch you reading page by page, it's an excellent way to teach them. There's so many fun, creative ways. Have fun with teaching your child things, especially during COVID-19. Um, Especially for the parents that aren't teachers, that aren't therapists. There are so many fun ways to learn out there.
yeah.
And
And
then,
another cool thing, too, that you just mentioned, I just want to piggyback off of, is with visuals. I also just realized like a couple of weeks ago that he knows how to read, and it's because of those like automated cartoons and stuff. So even if it's like showing you the letter A or B or whatever, and they're moving around and having fun, and it'll flash the word on there with the actual picture.
mhm,
And so now if I type just the word itself, he recognizes it because he's memorizing the the pictures or
mhm.
whatever. So I just found that to be cool as well.
That is
Something
really
new
cool.
I learned.
Um, hmm. Yeah, it's definitely like that's the key. Is like it sounds like you're having fun with learning how your son learns, and that's the key. Is playing to your kid's strength. Are they a visual learner? Are they an auditory learner? Um, yeah, definitely the best way to realize that your child is learning in their own way.
Yeah.
Um, so I always like to end my interviews with the following question: if you could change the way the world sees autism in one way, what would it be and why?
Ooh, that's a good question because I have several things, but um,
You can list them all if you want to.
I think I would first like for people to view autism just as a normal thing
Mm,
because they are normal people just like we are. And I would want them to, I guess, embrace the differences in people. So it's kind of weird because, again, we're talking about autism, but at the same time, this applies to anything,
mhm,
in life. I kind of feel like, again, when you're going out in a public setting and your child is being loud or jumping around, in my head, they're just being a kid.
mhm.
So that's my thing. I just wish that people would just, learn how to embrace everyone's differences, and then it will be I think it'll be more natural, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Because everyone's different, but not less. And they're like you said, they're being children jumping around. Like, what child does not jump around in a restaurant? What child, no child can sit still for an hour while their parents have polite conversation uh, and take their time eating. Like just remember to see your child as a child, and taking them out of the community becomes so much easier.
Exactly.
So for anyone out there who wants to get involved with Spectrum Cuties, how can they do that?
They can just visit us on Instagram at Spectrum Cuties. We also have a Facebook page. It's a little more complicated, I guess, communicating with people on there. So my preference is Instagram. I'm more on there, but they can definitely reach out and follow us. Send us a DM if they would like their child to be featured, and we normally just give them a brief questionnaire just to get to know their child, and put together a nice feature for them, just to again just show the world their actual strengths and what they've overcome.
That is great, Simone. Thank you so much for coming on my show today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Hope you enjoy teaching your son new things, and I hope to have you again on the show someday when uh, S- Spectrum Cuties become something much larger when we get out of this whole COVID-19 thing.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. All right, folks, that's been another episode of uh, um, Heroes of Autism. This is Sam Heber signing off.
Bye.